Just keeping me on my toes, just keeping me on my toes. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. Public participation is encouraged in the Laurel School District. All meetings of the board will be open to the public except provided by law. Scheduled meetings of the board may be recorded. Audience members may address the board during public comment for non-agenda interests or during the discussion of the relevant printed agenda item. Your attendance is welcome. If you plan to speak to the board, please look over the information on the agenda, then complete the comment card located in the back of the room, provide it to myself or Superintendent Torix. To address the school board members, I ask you to come up to the podium, identify yourself, and briefly state your concern. Public participation is a right that carries certain responsibilities, such as informing oneself in advance of the issues being discussed, voluntarily being as brief and germane as possible, not unduly repeating remarks others or you have already made, and showing respect at all times for the rights and opinions of others, whether citizens, board members, school district employees, or students. Thank you for your involvement in Laurel Public Schools. Do I have anybody who has public comment for non-agenda interests? I'm taking that as a no, so we will move through our agenda. On to correspondence. We have our partners within our community that do our donations, and of course we are always thankful when they do. They are a huge support to our students throughout all of our schools. So first we have American Pizza Partners, who donated to our volleyball program this year. Albertsons Bakery donated 20 pumpkin pies to the LMS Thanksgiving dinner. European Porta Potties for providing for our sports and outdoor events for the school as well. Then we both have SEG Credit Union and the Laurel Chamber of Commerce, who both gave high school pantry donations. So thank you so much for those. As always, we do appreciate every single one of them. Presentation, I'm not seeing presentation from A&E. Oh, hi, sorry, hi. Going down to A&E Graph and Field. So if we could have that pulled up, that would be great. You're on, yep, you're good.
It's also on their
yeah, we have ours.
So you can pull it up as well.
You want something
We would love them.
okay, perfect.
That's okay. Okay, we can pass it through.
Awesome. I'm Mary Demerel from A&E Design. We've been working on the development of Graph Field. I'll just give like a quick overview of what this is and then talk a little bit about budget and schedule, and then if you have any questions, happy to answer them. This was developed in partnership with Matt, Wayne, the softball coach, and your athletic director. So this is really a reflection of you guys as a team and those who probably will use this facility the most. As you can see, just to orient you, for those of you who may not be familiar, Graph is currently located in that southeast corner of the site where that alternate parking is shown. So what we're having north of there is a new softball field, and then everything dedicated west of there to the site includes discus, javelin, shot put, and other kind of site amenities there. Now, the way that this was structured,
Mary, can I give you just a quick
please.
Chase, will you just pass that one extra to the public so they can take a pass around too? Thank you very much, sir. Perfect.
I can't believe we had extra. Oh, you guys are so good.
You're good.
So when we initially did this study, we talked about kind of both the needs and the wants and the wish list item. So what I want to review with you is what we have in the base bid of what will definitely be included, and then also some potential alternates of what will happen depending on budgets and as bids come in. So definitely included within the project scope right now is the demolition of Graph. And then we have the soccer field that's really improving the grading and the drainage, some soil amendments and overseeding. The on-street parking, so that'll be restriping the on-street parallel parking. Some irrigation upgrades. This is interesting about these projects. It's everything you can't see that is going to be upgraded, but the well house, expanding the irrigation system. The field events, we have 5 new shot put rings, 2 new discus rings. The existing nets are going to be reused. And then the softball field, which has the field and fencing. The fencing around the softball field is new. The fencing around the rest of the site, we're going to keep the existing.
We're also going to add a javelin there in the middle.
Yes.
And then get the javelin off of the practice field. Not that we can't use it for something, but the javelin will be over here as well.
Thank you, Matt.
Here to help.
Yeah, go ahead.
Here to help us.
Oh, it's perfect. So included within that base bid, we've been targeting a budget. Right now, we're sitting at about 1.87. When we start to include soft costs, it'll be a little bit additional to that, but that's kind of within the general realm of scope that we've been talking about all along. What is a little bit different is what we've added as potential alternates. So these are things that we can incorporate into the project depending on how the budgets come back. With that, the parking you're seeing where Graph currently locates, that's an alternate. So that's not something included in the base bid. That's if we have additional funds to do that. The on-street parking would be included, however. We show it on these drawings to make sure that we're forecasting well and planning for the future regardless of what you do now, 5, 10, 15 years from now, but planning for that there. The restrooms, concessions just north of that, that is also an alternate. So that is dependent on budgets coming in. We did explore the turf infield, potentially becoming artificial turf. And then that's the third alternate. The fourth alternate is the walking trail that goes around the site. So you can start to see that up at the north, and then it turns down to the south on the west side. And then the javelin runway, that will be structured there, but whether or not that becomes runway surfacing. So that's an additional alternate. Those are all things that are outside of the initial budget that we had established, but we wanted to be able to give you guys as much flexibility as possible as we look to what may or may not fit within the scope of the project. The overall idea here is documents are done. I think we're going to have one more client meeting just to wrap things up, make sure everything is good to go. Drawings are done, and then the intent is to bid it probably January, February, just so that we can get as much attention from civil contractors as possible as we move into the spring. General scope of schedule would be that this work would start at the end of the school year this year. So Graph needs to go through some abatement in terms of asbestos. So part of the schedules depend on that. And obviously the students are currently at Graph. But then this would be a playable place as long as the grass grows by next spring.
Comments, questions from Chris?
Correct, that's the base price. So with the alternates, I can list them off for you. I should have totaled them all, but with the alternate, the most expensive alternate, as you might imagine, is the restroom and concessions. So these are all our budget numbers, so take it with a grain of salt, but that's like $250K-ish. The parking lot's about 200. The turf as an infield is 160-ish. The walking trail would be 60, javelin runway is 25, so they kind of scale. The good news about that is like we don't have it in a way where you have to take them in order. That's sometimes a way that we could structure them, but it's not. The order doesn't matter, so it is a shopping list, yeah.
So a question just so for the restroom and concessions, are you planning the infrastructure stubbing in so that's there so we wouldn't have to like rip everything up so like water and stuff is there, but if we don't construct the building, is the 250?
Great question. That is, I don't believe that is in there right now. I want to go back and that's part of the alternate cost, not as part of the base bid cost.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Renee?
With the softball field? Yep.
Is there going to be netting there so that balls are not shooting over it?
Yes. Oh, way over there. So usually it's behind essentially where like you kind of see the bleachers, like this line between dugout to dugout.
My concern is, bunch of like that are going to be shooting at those.
That's a good question. That's so potentially putting netting all the way along the east side.
Or like out of wood, like there's a net in between the fields.
Sure.
And I just want to be good neighbors. houses, especially for softball hitting that way, you're gonna get a lot of foul balls that way. And unless that fence is considerably, I mean, the ones that are super high are not an issue because it's the more like the line drives.
Renee, are you thinking like pass first? Like
The first
that?
base
Like
line?
first base line?
Yeah.
So
So
I have
either
a,
that, at least that fence be higher, so that we aren't.
Are you wanting to ask if we can budget fencing past first base too?
I don't know that it.
Oh,
needs to
who's
be-
Renee's isn't on? I'm sorry, Renee, I apologize.
Sorry.
Sorry, Devin. I wouldn't say pass, probably first base. I don't know.
I
Kayla
think it's
probably
gonna
has
be
some
It
input.
would have to be a tall net
First base.
for it to be helpful, in my opinion.
so how far is Mary, how far is the outfield or the fence going up the first base line from the dugout north? How far is that fence away from the actual street? Is there
Ooh,
any way
good
to?
question. I don't have that number in front of me, but looking at this, I would say if that dugout's probably 6 to 8 feet deep, that's probably 20 to 25.
So
30
so
feet.
there'd be a street there, but there potentially, like not a lot of people park on the west side of Wyoming. There would be quite a bit of parking on the east side of Wyoming, and then those houses would be across the street. I guess I would have to look at that and see, because I go to games and I see foul balls go. I just don't know how far they go over there.
Be more worried about the cars on the street than,
Yeah,
to
Well,
your point though. still.
If you ever go to a baseball or softball game, I
Park
park like 6
strategically.
blocks
Like
from
the
there.
cars, I feel like that's on you. Like you decide where you
Yeah,
park.
you can't
but
move a
the
house, you can move a
house-
car.
I just don't
I
know
mean, I
if
just
those
want to, I
houses
guess,
are
how far it.
across the street.
I guess it would, sir, hello, would you like to approach?
I think you could probably start off with extending your backstop fencing higher, right behind the backstop, and maybe go down a little bit further, starting off with that, because you're going to have to put that fence there anyways for your backstop. But if you started off with at least that, then you could really take a look at, how many foul balls are we getting fully, but extend that height, because sometimes you can see it go over the field, but right on your backstop, maybe even go behind the dugouts just a little bit, have that extended. It's going to be fencing anyways behind your backstop. Just extend it higher or have it go over the field just a little bit as well.
That was my only. That side, you're gonna get way more foul ball generally, and depending on, like she said,
Sorry, Devin. Depending on your pitchers, you're gonna have tons that way, and I just don't. I mean, if the spacing is good enough, because I don't know how far set back the field is from the dugout, you might be able to. But just as long as we are thinking about that.
So then question on that. Did you say that the dugouts are down?
no, the dugouts are not dug.
They're not dug, okay,
Nope, nope,
okay.
they're
never-
on grade.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions?
Yes.
No. What did you ask?
Fencing all the way around
Okay,
it.
the answer is right
Yes.
now, no.
On
Softball,
the
yes.
softball field.
Yes.
Softball, yes.
Yes. That's what I thought you
All
meant,
around the
sorry.
Not
softball.
all the way around the entire
Using-
complex,
No, no,
Correct.
but we're using the existing fencing that's already there, she said.
right?
Or
But
the-
it'll come, the fencing will come about halfway across the south. So the parking lot would be open, you'd be able to walk over to the softball, of course, softball have a fence around it. But right now, the fence will go all the way across the north side, all the way down the west side, and about half-ish across the south. And then there won't be fencing along Wyoming or part of South, the 6th Avenue.
You were
So
asking
the
about,
discus, javelin, and discus areas are going to be fenced off, so people can just walk through.
They will have fencing around,
Yeah,
but not on that west side, excuse me, on the east side, there will not be fencing. No, that's normally there right now, that's correct.
That is your question. Sorry, I thought
Yeah.
there is fencing all the way around softball, not the whole complex. It's this line. It's like a line and a circle in it. It starts about here, which I realize you're like 20 feet away from me, so I'm sure you can see that.
About halfway. Right, we did talk about that. Devin, are you giving us hand signals?
Because my mic probably.
Mic is not on? Uh-oh. We're just 0 for 2 today. We did talk about that briefly, about accessing it during track meets. I don't remember the exact discussion we had, Andrew, but you remember? We just talked about we'll have to limit people, obviously.
Yeah, limit. So with no fencing, basically from the south side to the shot put area, right now, we would have an option to put fencing in there in the future, but we would definitely do like a double flag rope for track meets, so people don't cross that over, because that's towards the end of those throwing areas. We don't want anybody to get shish kebab from javelin. So
And we did talk about running fence up straight north from 6th, somehow towards that shot put area. And we did talk about putting fence there if we need to. But closing it all off, we were worried. We also want people to be able to use the walking path too. That was kind of one of our things we wanted to look at.
Chris?
I was just gonna suggest, like, if budget allows and comes available, the order of the alternates, I would suggest that we go alternate parking, then concessions, then the walking path, then the turf. Depending on the budget, I would go alternate parking, provision for the concession stand as in infrastructure for it, because then we're just worrying about the structure, then the path, then the turf. That would kind of be my recommendation. Is you guys are looking at that. I don't know if that'll come back to the board or what, but that would be my recommendation when we move forward.
Any other comments, questions, Chase?
I was wondering if that was the one that's currently on the western side that connects the current shot put in discus to the track. Okay.
So there'll be one in each corner
Okay,
then.
one
There'll
in
be
each
one where it currently is, where you can walk right to the shot put. We'd be putting one over on the other corner that we'd be relocating from another place. So we're not getting rid of the fence, it's the gate that's currently there. So there'd be one on each corner.
Thank you.
Good question, thank you. Renee?
So I see that there's gates in the softball field at like right field, going out to right field and left field. Are we making sure those are big enough for the equipment that we're gonna need to maintain that field?
That's a good question. Right now, those just look like 3 feet. So maybe you know what kind of lawnmowers you can. That's a great comment.
that's a good point.
Yep.
I mean, and I almost wonder if there needs to be a gate at the back. To have, yeah, one either in the left field corner or right field corner, so that it's gonna be hard to navigate equipment through the sides probably.
Okay, where do your lawnmowers come from? Does it make more sense left or right field?
It doesn't.
It doesn't
Probably
matter.
left field, but
Probably
I mean,
left
just
field
because
would
there's
make more
more
sense.
room
Yep,
there.
because of
Mow
this.
in all that, and then they could just go into a
Dead center.
Yep, we could definitely revise that.
And then do we know how many feet it is from like to fence?
I think it's 200, wasn't it?
It's a regulation in high school.
Minimum regulation?
I think it's
We
200
can look that
feet.
up for you. I don't.
I just, yeah, I mean, some fields are bigger, obviously.
200, 225 or something.
Chris?
Play not just softball, but baseball on it too then? It's
Won't have a mound.
Baseball.
Little kid.
We play Little League on it though?
We'll have a mound.
Oh, one of
It's be a fast pitch.
Oh, so even Little League wouldn't be able to use it for that without a.
Little League could use it, like little boys, yes, that don't
Yeah.
use a mound to
Yeah,
pitch
like
off of.
T-ball or something.
Yeah, well,
But it
yeah, or
wouldn't be
even
good for,
some
like,
kid,
even like 10 and 12-year-olds, it wouldn't work.
but probably Little League softball will use it.
Oh, yeah, softball.
As long as it's getting multi-use, that's what I'm
Yeah.
hoping. It's not like, otherwise it's incredibly specific to like, a team can play on it. That's kind of would be a bummer.
Less difference between the softball and baseball. You're just always gonna run into that. If you build a baseball field, the softball can't play on it. I believe, as far as competitive game, the mound is what kills you. And the bases are different, but you can always adjust that.
Comments from public audience, questions? Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I got one more, I'll leave it.
Thank you very much. If you will please mark for the next presentation, the safety conference. Christina Peterson unfortunately went home not feeling very good, so has requested that we move that to the next meeting. So please make a note of that. Moving through our agenda. Next item would be the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'd motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve by Chris. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Jenny. Do I have any comments, questions from the board? Comments, questions from public audience? Not hearing or seeing any. Motion to approve on the consent agenda made by Chris, seconded by Jenny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving through our agenda down to action items. Action item A for policy updates on the second reading. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the policies listed under A, 1 through 5.
Approved by Renee. Do I have a second? Okay. Comments, questions from the board? Comments, questions from public audience? Okay, not hearing any or seeing any. Action item A, policy update, second reading, motion to approve by Renee, seconded by Chris with a K. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Moving down to action item, which should be B, as high school library books. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the high school library book.
Okay, second?
Second.
I'll take it with Chris Larash. Any comments, questions from the board? Jenny?
Okay, I went through these books and I noticed a couple of things that I think we need to decide. Number one, there was a number that are like brand new, and I couldn't find much about them. So 2 are even going to not be released until March of 2025. So I don't know how I'm not comfortable approving them for review when nobody has read them at all. And then there's also a number of them, I count at least 3 or 4 that are young adult horror, which I've never heard of that genre, but there's a lot of gore and violence and blood and decapitation. So I'm not sure how the board feels about that genre in particular, and how it pertains to our policy. It's not pornographic or anything, but I don't know if it's really a rich educational content that we want to use public funding for. So I thought that I just want to discuss that in general, just with the board, how others feel.
But what are the 2 books that are not released yet?
2 books that are not released are Sunrise on the Reaping by Susan Collins. It comes out March 18th, 2025. and Oathbound by Tracy Dion. That comes out March 4th, 2025.
Context, the Sunrise on the Reaping would be a Hunger Games sequel.
I agree, but it's just, I want to do due diligence and, I mean,
I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree to that.
right.
Next questions from the board.
I guess I'm not a, I don't read horror, but I know that that is a genre that people enjoy. Like, I would never read a Stephen King book, for example, but I
True.
know people
Yeah, I
really
just-
enjoy them. So I guess as far as like content wise, it doesn't, I think it's a genre that can be in the library as far as I think people derive enjoyment from it. I don't, but I mean, some people do. So that'd be my opinion, as long as it doesn't go into the graphic. See, and I think that's the key. It doesn't have to be sexually graphic. It could also be violently graphic, right? So in deep description of like, I think that also, doesn't that fall into the policy or does it not? I guess I want to make sure. I thought it was any explicit, didn't have to be sexually explicit. It could be any explicit content.
Nudity and obscenity.
Those are the two things that mostly, I don't think there's anything in there about.
We didn't cover express
area or
violence.
anything.
It states that the district's objectives to choose material that provides rich educational content, and that the district may choose other material that provides similar content, but does not contain explicit sexual content, vulgarity, or profanity. So there's that. Or is unnecessary for minors in a school setting. District will prioritize inclusion of quality materials suitable for the age of the child using the library. This is high school, so we got to be aware of that. I would like to discuss it, you know, how comfortable you were. Some of the, like, it includes body horror, blood and gore, violence, drowning, injury detail, adult minor relationships, grooming, death, suicide, animal death, character death. That's Bad Graces by Kiri McCauley. I mean, so I'm not sure without reading it how graphic it is.
I think it's hard to outrule a genre.
Agreed.
Like in total, you know, everyone, you know, something might be horror to you that's not horror to me at all, you know, or vice versa. So I think just getting rid of a genre entirely from a library, we can't do that. I don't think.
I would agree with that too.
And then I think it still comes, even like every book, I think, if it's kind of my opinion, and I guess I haven't spoke up in the past, but it's of my opinion that if we're going to get rid of a book, we've got to like maybe read it, because they've probably done more work than I can Google.
Actually, I think we did require the policy change for that. I think it has to be a red book for it. But this is pre-purchase, so that'd be removal of a book, not purchase. But I don't disagree, like on the purchase side, maybe that could be a part of it. But that was part of why we set it up this way to pre-pass, so that we could maybe avoid those issues. But yeah, we haven't said it's like explicit or like explicit violence. Man, I thought we had put the policy to be explicit material.
Material that would be illegal to give to minors, such as illegal just in the world, like pornography, visually or visually implied depictions of sexual acts or simulations of such acts, explicit written descriptions of sexual acts, or visual depictions of nudity, except for where in science or health instruction, breastfeeding, historical documents, or classical works of art. So it really never does address the horror genre in here specifically, or even.
We have horror books in the library now. We do.
Stephen King. Oh yeah.
We have like those so the genre is not uncommon for our library.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I don't know what Stephen King, but I've never been in a high school library that didn't have them.
That's yeah, I know. Yeah.
Part of the curriculum.
I've asked for any other comments from board members.
Yep, just wanted the discussion around it, and I an approval of a motion with those two books that have not yet be released.
Since I do have
I
a
wrote those
motion,
down.
I do have a motion on the table. Let me ask for public comment now, since I do any public. Lori? Chase? Good luck to you tonight.
Yeah, good luck. Break a leg, though. You don't say good luck when you
Oh,
performing.
sorry.
Break a
excuse
leg.
me. Break two then.
Lori Hodges, librarian at the high school, and just because I'm here, so the two that you mentioned, Kaylee is correct. They're going to be widely popular, and if we don't have them day one, so it's the Suzanne Collins Hunger Games continuation, and the next one, the other one is the Legendborn series, third book in the trilogy, and that kids are going to be chomping at the bit. So we try to get them and have them as soon as we can, because kids, I mean, we already have the first part of the series, so it's just continuing those. So we like to get on the pre-order if possible. So thank you.
Chris?
So in light of that too, and I really agree with Jenny's, like, these two may be okay, but I think we need maybe a cognizance of, like, maybe they should just be notated like pre-release or something. Because I agree with what Lori's saying too, like, we'd like to get those as soon as possible, but also it sort of usurps the vetting process. Whereas these two might be okay, other books that we may want to bring into the library are not the continuation of a series or heretofore unknown content, like, should be available for public scrutiny. And I think maybe we just need to notate that. I wouldn't say we should outright ban not having, bringing books in from that aren't, but I think that we should probably notate them on the list, to be fair, that, hey, these are pre-release.
I do have a motion for an approval on the high school library books from Chris, seconded by Chris. Standing by our motion. Okay, I hear nothing else returned from that. So again, action item B, high school library books, approved by Chris K, seconded by Chris. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay.
Hey.
I have two, Renee and Jenny. Thank you, ladies. Motion does carry. Action item, which would be C, is the termination of employment. Do I have a motion?
Motion to proceed with the termination of the employee mentioned in the action item.
Second.
Nay. Comments, questions? Questions by public audience? Hearing or seeing any? Action item C, the termination of employment. Motion to approve by Chris.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Action item D, add miscellaneous subaccount. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the opening of a high school miscellaneous fund account for the career fair.
Thank you, Donnie. Motion to approve from Donnie. Do I have a second? Second with Chris with a K. Comments, questions from the board? Not hearing or seeing any. Comments, questions from public audience? Again. Action item D, the add of miscellaneous subaccount by Donnie, seconded by Chris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action item E, the approval of new out-of-district student for 2024-2025. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the out-of-district students referenced in the recommendation.
Motion to approve by Renee. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kayla. Comments, questions from the board? Renee?
These students won't begin until the first day.
That's on me. That's,
Listed in our policy as second semester without that.
correct. Eligible transfer. Yeah. Any other comments, questions from the board? Comment? Oh, Julie?
They moved out of the district in December, therefore applying to stay in the Laurel schools. They're already here in Laurel schools.
So they will stay.
They're just moving out of the district, but they want to stay in Laurel schools.
Right, so that is
So
part of our
that's-
policy. That's right. My apologies. I had the last kid we approved in my head. That is the case, that we need to do this, so then that can go on the record and we can collect money from that out of district for the
Whether they live.
prorated amount for the rest of the year. So that's what that's approving is, and we don't have to do this in order to do that, so.
Thank you, Julie, for clarifying. Any other comments, questions from the board? Comments, questions from public audience? Okay, not hearing or seeing any. For action item E, the approval of out-of-district student 2024-2025. I have approval by Renee, seconded by Kayla. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Action item F, the purchase of new technology. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the purchase of new technology per the recommendation.
Motion to approve by Chris. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Jenny. Do I have any comments, questions from the board? Donnie?
I just want to clarify the CDWG quote. Is that a purchasing cooperative quote? So we did not need to go out to bid.
It is. Thank you, Devin. I got the thumbs up. Do you see that? Okay. Did you see how I looked directly to him too, just to make sure? Any other comments, questions from the board? Comments, questions from public audience? Julie?
I'll speak to the technology. You know, we only get we have a $40,000 permissive levy for the elementary side and then $20,000 for the high school side. And, you know, technology is just, you know, luckily we had ESSER. And we purchased a lot of technology with ESSER funds. Now we don't have ESSER. And I did have Devin do a 5-year plan just so I have something to look at. But, you know, next year he's, you know, looking at even more equipment and stuff. And so we're going to have to think about how we're going to pay for that. And, you know, it either is going to have to come out of the general fund or the multi-district, because there's no way the technology fund will pay for those.
Or it just may not be something we can afford to do.
Right.
But this is the plan to replace, so the board understands what it takes to replace this. Now, sometimes you can get an extra year out of some of the computers, and that pushes it off a year. So instead of a 5-year cycle, maybe we can get 6 or 7 out of a few of them. But these things are expensive, and they've kind of hit, and Devin, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, technology like, for example, Chromebooks, those have kind of hit about as low as they're ever going to go. Some technology tends to go down over time. Things like Chromebooks, we haven't really seen a drop in those in a number of
Yeah,
years.
so devices like Chromebooks are mainly made, they're kind of value buys. So they're made to bring people into a place. Happens that Google also kind of pivoted to work towards schools. So the goal of Chromebooks is to bring school districts into the Chrome ecosystem, right? That way they can get more money off the yearly subscriptions. So they really sound very close to cost, and you don't really make a lot. I would expect about that same cost plus a little bit as inflation happens and all that stuff. So just as a general for those kinds of technologies. But those also are kind of the more reasonable device rotation, because we always just we get new devices and we give them to the 7th graders, and then they follow the 7th graders up through graduation, and they kind of self dispose of themselves basically. So that's kind of an easy yearly purchase. That one's going to be very consistent. A lot of the big items that you see that like like Promethean panels, for instance. It's like $400 and something thousand dollars, $420,000, something like that, to replace all our Promethean panels. But our teachers use them every day for teaching, and they make teachers teach a lot better, being able to switch through and have material that they've already prepared. And they have mannerisms of teaching that are directly revolving around that technology. So at some point, we have to decide, is that extra value that they provide worth us buying, and how we pay for it? And I think leaning forward, ESSER was really nice because it did give us a lot of money, but it also, we used to have a lot more expenditures out of the general fund and kind of had our teeth in that money already. It was already spoken for us. We couldn't use it for other things. But then when we didn't have to use our general fund on that, it freed up those resources for other areas. Some of those resources back, or we have to find another way, or the legislature might fix things with the decennial study. So I don't think that one's super likely, but I'm hopeful. So.
We won't know anything on the decennial study until 27 though. So that is the negative part of this is, we're guessing on some of this. So this is not necessarily what we have to spend in the next few years. This is a good indicator of what we may need to spend, because there's a distinct lifespan on these pieces of equipment. And Dev and I have sat down and looked at all this, and these are just really scary numbers, but it is unfortunately the reality of using technology in our everyday lives and having a one-to-one, unless we want to go a different direction. But that's a little scary sometimes too, because we want to prepare kids as much as we can for the interactions they're going to have in the future.
It's also hard to say what actually we could wind up cutting, because there's things like our teacher laptops, which would have just been teacher desktops, which should have wound up being about the same cost. So really cutting that, we'd just be removing computers for teachers. So that's kind of, can't do that. Then our Chromebook one-to-one, we now use them for testing, for like ACT tests and for almost all testing in classrooms. They do quizzes on them. They do self-grading things on them. So it's like, where can we cut value? And this is the list of things that I could find that they're kind of non-negotiables. These are things that we aren't really going to be able to cut, even if we wanted to, without some serious impacts on the district. I didn't include any subscriptions in these because subscriptions are kind of negotiable. We could figure out resources that would be free or otherwise available. But this is kind of the bare list of just the hardware that we need in order to get us through. And it's kind of been a thing, even with Wendy and I, when we got the ESSER money, it was something that we were really concerned about. Just looking forward into this time and seeing, how do you actually plan for this? These are going to be huge expenditures that we have at specific times that maybe not so specific. We might be able to get a couple extra years out of the Promethean panels or a couple extra years out of the other things in these. But how do you actually save that money? And we've actually been trying to come up with creative ways to cut down on huge expenses. One of the big things that I'm happy to be slowly eliminating are computer labs. And we're finding better ways to provide good services for students through remote desktop services, so they can access, just from their Chromebooks, they can access Windows. And that saves us from having to replace labs every year, which 30 computers times $1,200 a computer is quite a bit in savings. We do wind up having to buy like docking stations and monitors, but it's like $300 versus $1,200 or $1,400. So looking forward, it's just kind of scary, and it's going to be a lot of just making it work, but I think we'll be able to. So
one of the things we do, just so the board knows, and Julie and I were talking about it, was our permissive technology levy. And we have a kind of a minimal technology levy that we have in perpetuity, but we can obviously ask for more money, but that's, again, another tax burden, another ask for the community in order to try to keep up with this. This is one thing, though, that Devin and I are hoping that because the old funding model from, what was it, 1992 or 1 or whatever it was, this kind of stuff really wasn't in there. Neither was SROs, neither was a lot of mental health stuff. So the schools have taken on these costs. We've had to cut in other places in other ways. So we would hope that the new funding model in 27, if they do a new funding model, takes into account the need for these types of things. And it's great that they allow us technology levies to go to the public, but what if the public says no? That doesn't do away with the kids and the need to have this stuff. We just have to decide how we're gonna cut other places and people to make do for this. So, yeah, darned if you do, darned if you don't. It is an unfortunate situation, but just to keep, again, Devin's trying to plan ahead. We don't want to be, well, we'll just figure out what we can buy next year when we get to the end of the year. We don't want to do that. We want to have a rotation and look at what's that going to cost the district.
And optimally, I'm going to work to split these costs out, but it's hard with longer device lives. But say like a laptop is a 4-year life. So in 4 years, maybe we can replace half the fleet, other half, and then 4 years later, replace half the fleet, and then replace the other half of those halves. So you have to do a quarter of the fleet each year. And doing that would really help make things a lot more regular, which is easier to budget for. It's just with the current work this summer of moving everything from buildings to buildings, like from Graph to the new elementary schools and stuff, I can't see how we can start factoring that into this cycle because it's going to be pretty overwhelming as is. Trying to get everything done before all of that happens so that we can have that huge task out of the way. So, and it also keeps us from having to move all that stuff from building to building with us. And
Chris?
Good question. I mean, this doesn't fall under FF&E for the new buildings, right? Is this?
Well, that's a very good question. Some of it can fall under FF&E for the new building, and Devin and I have talked about that there's a certain amount of money, not this much, but a certain amount of money that Shane has put aside for technology in the new buildings. So we'll make sure that that money is usable. So let's say we buy computers tomorrow, okay? Well, we can turn around and, we get to next spring and we have $100,000 left in our bond budget for technology. We can go ahead and move some of that money, use it out of the bond budget, and then move some of the other money back into technology. So there is some money. Of course, this involves high school and this involves middle school, and that isn't part of the bond. But yeah, there's some of this we can move to the bond. Some. But it's not unlimited, but then that helps us for a year, but it doesn't help us, over 5, 6, 7 years.
It's nice looking at Devin's budget. I mean, he's got 2 whammy years. This year's a whammy year, really. And
It's got more whammy years.
oh, I guess I looked wrong.
Yeah, he's got a couple.
I got yeah. Man.
What do you
he really
consider
did mess up.
whammy?
it's been nice because we
Well,
haven't
over
had to spend
100K.
much.
Yeah.
Past few years have been great because we haven't had to spend much out of tech, but it's also kind of scary because it's been like, well, I've got a little bit of money available. How do I use this? And I couldn't come up with options because we had so many other things. I found other things that we could use that would be good investments for the district that made Chromebooks easier for kids to use. That kind of thing helped facilitate that. But I didn't have the normal expenses that we have of buying a computer lab every year, buying 2 computer labs every year.
Rid of that lab in 2031, like you're saying. That would be a huge thing, right? Yeah.
And also speaking to our tech levy, with our tech levy, our current one is in perpetuity. So it's about 60,000. It's 40,000 from the elementary and 20,000 from the high school. And that's a perpetual levy. So we get it every year. We don't have to ask for it. But that's because it was an old levy. If we go and we run for a new levy, we lose that perpetual levy and we have to get approved for a 5-year levy. So every 5 years, we'd then be going to bat for another levy. And it kind of, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So it's going to be hard to have the value be over what we would get from that perpetual.
I'm impressed.
I also did a pretty good breakdown on my board report of just how device cycles go and how the rotation of tech in businesses work. It's really hard to kind of put that in mind with education because there's not a cost on educational value.
Value to it. I read it.
But it's understanding that people's time has value and cycling that in too. So definitely worth a read if you guys have.
Thank you, Devin.
Thanks, Devin.
Thank you.
So,
Director Devin is working to challenge Wayne for spending the most money.
Well, 60 million is going to be hard to beat. So.
yeah. Since I'm not seeing any other comments and questions from the board, any comments, questions from public audience? If not, all righty. Action item F, purchase of new technology. I do have a motion to approve by Chris, seconded by Jenny. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for that. We will be going through our agenda next for informational items, financial reports, and of course, our principal reports and community meetings. So I do appreciate for every single one of you who have put that together. We do appreciate that. I know it's a lot of time. I know your days are busy and then trying to get it all back down and updating us as well. But please know, I do appreciate that. Board, if you have a question or a comment, please let me know, but I will be moving through these. Department reports, activities. A lot of honorable recognition to several of our teams, so that's awesome. Curriculum director report. Charla has been doing absolutely nothing for any of her meetings around the state as well, and so thank you for that, Charla. Facilities. And I know Wayne's not here, but it was a good catch, and I know everybody worked hard for West with our little gas leak. So we do appreciate everybody working quickly and diligently for that school. Food services. I do have a question. I know she's not here either, but maybe you'll know. Oh, hi. You commented that we're seeing more and more kids eating lunch at the high school. Is that right? Do we have a factor as why?
Food is great.
Oh, it's awesome. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's delicious.
I honestly don't really have any idea why, besides that the food is good and the workers there are great and the brandy is awesome.
How much are the numbers up?
I want to say, so last year we were doing around 50 to maybe 60 students for lunch at the high school, and this year we're doing anywhere from 80 to 100 for lunch. And our second breakfast numbers, we changed the time of doing second breakfast, and the second breakfast numbers have gone up a little bit, but they're lower than last year, but lunch is superseding that. So, yeah, it's kind of weird because I thought elementary would go up a lot more. It's up.
It's up.
But I thought it would go up a lot more with everything being free, but high school's zoomed right up there to help out. So it's awesome.
Thank you very much. Technology. Devin just gave us his rundown on that as well, so I appreciate that. Transportation. I'm super excited for our parent app. Looks like we're getting closer and closer to that, so that's kind of nice as well. Okay, financial reports, Julie, we do appreciate that. Bond expenses, cash report, revenue report, expenditure report, treasurer cash summary, high school activities for the revision of October and then November's, middle school activities. Julie, again, thank you very much for that. Principal reports, we have South, West, Graph, middle school, and high school. So thank you very much. Again, I do appreciate everybody putting those reports in. Committee meetings, we have November 4th, district operation. Yes, ma'am.
I just think it's a technicality, but I think it's important to note in the notes that we were talking about type E buses, not class E buses.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Technicality.
That's okay, I want to make sure.
Type E buses is what we were talking about, not class E.
Type E and
We're
not
looking at
class. Yep.
PI guidelines and.
Did you refer to everything as type E, not class E? That's true.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. November 7th for leadership and learning. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Is that a permanent move to 1 o'clock, or was that for that particular meeting?
Requested to be a permanent move to 1 o'clock. November 14th, capital planning. Superintendent's report. Thank you, Mr. Torres, for providing your information as well. Resignation report. Job vacancies. Donnie, update for MTSBA, your lead.
Do have an update for you. But my email closed on me and that's
No,
where.
mine just did the same thing.
Oh. Well, let's see if I can do it by memory, because I looked at it just before we started.
Devin, we all shut down off of the internet just. Can you get it on your phone by chance, Donnie?
I think I can recall the
recall?
items that they were, so I'll just.
While Devin's helping us out.
Just talk about them. One of them being that last week's think tank was around the STARS Act, which is the legislation that the camps group is putting together that basically results in $52 million of additional revenues for teachers. Mr. Parks talked about that in his report also. Those are really kind of exciting conversations that they're having, so I encourage everybody to tune in on Thursdays and listen to what's going on with that. There was an update that came out recently from Tony Koenig, who has taken over for Chris Goss as the policy person, so we can look forward to a whole bunch more policies besides what they're working so hard on currently. Did we come back on? Did I see that?
Yes, we
Yep,
did.
it should be back.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I will do better in the future to get my report in writing to everybody so they have something to reference moving forward. Mr. Torks also talked about the negotiations training that school board is putting on, that we've been signed up for it, so that should be some pretty interesting information provided by Andy Seaver. And I don't remember the fourth item. If I find it, yeah, we have a friend in here.
I saw that.
I'm gonna kill him. He's dead bug.
If I find it and it's important, relevant, I will bring it up towards the end of the meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you
That's
very
it.
much.
Thanks.
Going through book donation for high school.
It was just one book. It was a guest speaker at the high school, donated 2 of the books to the high school library. Before they can put them on, of course, it's just the one book, Beyond the Jump Shot.
Donated library book for West. Or books, excuse me. And then the books received through the Scholastic Book Fair points for West as well. If nothing else, for that, we will go into our discussion. First on the list of discussions, A, which is currently with everything linked, the buy-sell agreement and rezoning update. If the board has any comments and questions, Nathan Matlich, the school's representative with Coldwell Banker Commercial, is here if we needed to have any updates, questions that he can provide as well.
Let me just give an overview.
Yeah, in October, I received an email from our buyer and his associates representation that just simply said that they had filled out for the city a rezoning, but technically the city said, well, you're not the owner, so you have to you can't ask for the rezoning. So they sent it over to me and I co-signed for that rezoning application so they can see if it can be rezoned. So that went out late October, and at some point the city got it, and they're setting up December 18th. It's the City County Planning Board who makes a zoning recommendation. They don't vote on zoning. They make it. We've all been through this with our own Mogan. So they make a zoning recommendation to the city, and then the city will make their decision based on whatever they want to do with that. So that is really where we stand. So I did send it out, and I put the letter in here from Jeff Weldon, just making sure that was okay, because it was brought up, and in no way was I ever trying to get by something on the board. I mean, it was in the buy-sell that we were going to do this. I did inform Brittany that they were in their rezoning process, then I signed it. But I can assure everyone in there, I in no way was trying to bypass the board on it, something within the buy-sell, and I did. I just signed it, and they were going to ask for rezoning. So I just want to let you guys know was my feeling on the whole thing. So right now it's sitting there, and they would appreciate. I talked to Paul Nelson, or Paul emailed me over the weekend, and he just asked that if we could all be there to support it, it would be great, or at least whoever can be there on the 18th to support the rezoning at that time. So more than happy to answer any questions if I can. I'd certainly be happy to do that.
And so the conversation during a board chair meeting was, how do we go about sending this out? And I said, well, do we hold off to make sure we know what the city and what date they chose? Because at that point, we didn't know what it looked like from the city standpoint. They didn't have a date chosen yet. We were waiting to hear that. For that, we didn't have a public forum about the buyer's request for zone change when we didn't have any information to share, which you guys would have asked. When is this coming down? And I would have said, I don't know yet. I did ask to be notified when we had that date. Unfortunately, the notification did not come in, and it became the actual notice public hearing from the city. That does appear that it's saying that Laurel is the one requesting the zone change, but the intent is the buyers requesting the zone change. We just had to accompany the application because we are the legal owners of it. Then there was question that I was the one who pushed it and didn't think that it should be coming to the board. We are underneath the buy-sell. There is intent for the buyer to rezone. At that point, we were under good faith to assist with the buyer for the betterment of the buy-sell to get to the end of the game. So unfortunately, I do apologize. I honestly was not holding it, even though that's what's claimed. I was not holding it just to hold it. I was holding it for the purpose to ensure we had all the information. I was not aware the city was just going to go out and do it without at least giving us an update first. So I will apologize for that. I was not prepared for that, nor was I prepared for the community around the building to be noticed without knowing that we were fairly aware of it. Jenny.
What happens if they change the zoning while we still occupy this building? Does it impact us at all? No.
And also, I think the zoning would be future dated. I mean, they wouldn't have, they have to approve it, and then they don't have to change it until, well, what I mean,
Whatever it's
right, to that, but to a date is what I'm saying. It wouldn't change the day we,
date that they do the resolution.
I didn't know you couldn't future date that. Like it's going to change.
That's a good question. Do you think
I would
It makes
assume that
sense
they're
if
gonna
they
future
would
date.
do a contingent on,
Right,
you
because
know, a final purpose, but planning and zoning don't do that.
Because boy, they conditioned us on that
city
building over
council-
there.
Okay, so
do what he's asking? Would the city council make a resolution though, Chris, that would say, should the building, I mean, I guess that'd be up to them.
Because it'd be conditional. It's already conditioned. The zoning would be conditional.
I guess what would be the fear if the zoning went through?
Yeah, I don't think that's fear. I think the sale of the building is the biggest, make sure that that goes through.
But Chris is questioning if it did get zoned the moment that the city, what would be the fear?
Oh, then
That we're rezoned?
Well, because would that
Yes.
change our tax qualification on this building as a district? It kind of, wouldn't it put us in a weird spot?
Already in residential, 6,000, so I mean, there might be a change. I can't honestly tell
That's
you.
what that would be my only wonder is so then if we do it and and say the deal falls through for some reason, now we're in a permanently zoned building that's not school.
And that's why I had Nate come in as well, just to talk about if in the event the nuclear bomb hit and the buyer walked after it was approved, which would shock probably all of us, but if it happened underneath Coldwell Banker Commercial's personal opinion, we'd probably be sitting in a better position. But go ahead, Nate.
Absolutely. So anytime you list a commercial property for sale, the number one question is, what is the highest and best use of this particular building? Under the current zoning, being a residential zoning, you basically have to demolish, all of the buildings, on this lot in order to, go down the path of, building houses, those sorts of things, which, with such a rich history, no one would probably want to see, all of these buildings leveled. When we talk about like the value of different properties, a residentially zoned property typically isn't worth as much as a commercially zoned property. So the fact that our buyers going through this process and kind of trying to upzone the property as a whole makes it more valuable. And then the two most likely types of redevelopment for this building are either condos / apartments. His application is to do a condominium project, or office space. Now, many of you are very intelligent, and if I asked you, do we need more Class A office space in Laurel? You might say that we don't need 44,000 square feet of Class A office space. And what I would say is it'd be very difficult, to then fill and lease that. So it basically makes this sort of condo project, the highest and best use. And even if the zoning went through, and then for some reason, Paul got ran over by a bus, we would be in a perfect position. And even 2 days ago, I had another buyer that had recently inquired on this building, reach out and see if the building was still available for sale. So, personally, I don't, see any downsides of the direction that we're going. One thing, I did have some good conversations with Paul over the last week. He was very kind, and he told Collaborative Design that I could release mock-ups of what he's looking to do. So if I have your approval, I was going to pass those out.
Chris.
While he's doing that, I think, do I remember a few months ago that the contingencies, at least the financing contingency was gone, and was there other contingencies that were gone that they had? So they waived all, I thought they had waived all contingencies, so they're basically, they're locked in unless, like you said, like he gets hit by a bus or something like that crazy happens. So we're just in facilitation mode, like you said, Brittany, like good faith effort to fulfill the terms of the buy-sell as originally stated, right?
Correct.
Do we have that document? I haven't seen that document, for the contingencies.
I thought we said like months ago it got sent. Or did we actually see the doc, or did you just say, you just said it was waived?
I can't remember. Nate,
Some kind of agreement for the removal of all the contingencies. Has there been an agreement signed?
Paul sent a letter waiving all contingencies. I know that last time that George and I were here that we shared that news. If you have not seen that, happy to send it. I believe I sent it to Matt and Brittany as soon as we received it. If I didn't, I can recirculate that.
If you wouldn't mind recirculating, I don't remember ever seeing that. I remember I was talking about it, but I don't remember seeing a letter.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Great,
Happy to recirculate that, of course. Basically, what you have in your hands are going to be the mock-ups for what Paul Nelson is looking to do with the school. It's going to be a 45-unit condominium project. One thing that's very exciting about it is that it's a condominium project and not necessarily just an apartment complex. So Paul is going to give the city of Laurel residents the ability to buy some of these condo units. And so for me specifically, I got 5 small kids. My parents live in Arizona. And so, this sort of project, my dad's had like 35 surgeries and, has a tough time getting around and doesn't, shovel snow very well. So, my dad would be kind of one of the perfect candidates of, buying one of these condos. We'll see if we can convince him to move up here. But 45 unit condo project. I think that there's 52 or so parking spaces. So they have more parking than just one space per unit. And there's a couple sample floor plans in there. There will be some 2 bedrooms, some 1 bedrooms, and some studios. The sample floor plan in there is just for one of the floors. Both the first and the second floor will be very similar to those. And then obviously the basement will be kind of a little bit different. But if you look at some of the exterior mock-ups, Paul plans on, taking these old windows out and going floor to ceiling with some new windows. And so, between high ceilings, huge, beautiful new windows, it's going to be, hopefully just a showpiece of Laurel. So very, very great addition to the community.
If he's, what their plans are for the gym? I mean, does he talk about it?
He hasn't said anything specific at all. As you guys probably know, he's replaced a gymnasium wood floor or two in his time. He most recently has done some work for
Western Sports Floors. He does gyms all over the state.
Yep. So he has some really cool ideas of, redoing the floors. Pickleball is gained a lot of, momentum. While he said that, he hasn't shared anything specifically. But his whole goal through the project, it sounds like, hey, I want to do something amazing for the Laurel community, and has had some different ideas of kind of bringing the gym back to, some of its former.
Comments, questions from the board? Any comments, questions from public audience?
And just as a reminder, the closing date per the buy-sell is March 1st, and then the school would lease back till June 11th. So originally put together the buy-sell, we sat down with, Matt and, kind of lined up some of those dates, kind of, collaborating and saying, hey, when would it be good to have a closing, to have that influx of cash, but then also, how long do you need to exit the building? So just a reminder, closing is set for March 1st, and then lease back through June 11th.
Is there any opportunity for us to have a later date? Have we addressed that?
He's back through, and I've called
Last week of school is
Mr. Nelson. I have called him on that. We played a little phone tag this weekend, and I haven't called him back. But that would be something, and that's something I was going to talk to him about. But is it more appropriate to go through you on that?
Yeah, and we're happy to help with that. It'd probably be important that as part of closing, that we have some sort of official lease. Even though it's in the buy-sell, it's always important to have a lease for these sorts of things. So if there's anything that we need to include, change, or modify, we can certainly.
Well, what Chris was asking is that can we look at going until July?
Moving the closing date.
Moving the lease, allowing us to lease it for a little bit longer.
Oh, sure. Paul has been phenomenal to work with. He's just a great guy. And so I think it's something where if you guys need a little more time, I can pick up the phone, give him a call. It'd be good if you proposed a specific date, if it's not, June 11th, so that can have that exact conversation.
I can move it to an action item to see if we can request that and actually make it
I think
official.
that would be worth doing at the January board meeting and seeing it, because it just may be helpful, because originally we thought Graf was going to be tore down a much later date than June of 25. So we thought we could be in Graf for potentially months. And now that they're going to move forward on Graf with the speed of light here, then that puts us in a little bit more of a jam that we didn't think we'd be in.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, the way that the buy-sell is written is that for $10,000, the school will lease back these facilities and continue to pay for the utilities. So obviously, I want to work on your behalf. We'll try to work with Paul in good faith and just, try to extend that out a little bit and see if he's okay in just doing so without any additional compensation. So happy to ask him that.
And I guess we'll notice if we're gonna go to this 18th meeting if there's more than.
And I was going to bring that up. I personally believe, I think we should be there, enforced to support it. Your own opinion if you feel differently, but I think as the board, we want it to go because it would be in the buyer's best interest, which would then get us, everybody, to that goal of closing. So if that works, I will just go ahead and have it noticed that we could be. Now, it won't be any action item. There won't be any discussion. Of course, it will just be that we are within the vicinity of each other in one room for a common goal.
Yeah, 6 p.m. on the 18th, and certainly would encourage all of you to be there. I know I'll be there.
City Hall. Yep.
Nathan, just all of the contingencies, that includes the financing contingency. Is that correct?
I believe that's.
It wasn't just all of the ones in the past. It also includes any of the contingencies that have dates that are in the future.
I'll have to go back and look at it. I don't have the letter right for me.
I don't have it.
Okay, so I'll send it to you for circulation.
Discussion on that? Thank you, sir.
All right.
I do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Who's gonna get? I don't have it. Okay, moving on to reorganization of Class A. Andrew, want to give us an update and what's going on with that?
Reorganization of Class A. We are going to 4 football divisions for Class A starting next fall 2025. I do have to apologize. I thought that it had to be voted on at the January annual meeting. But I was wrong about that, and it will go into effect for next school year.
What does that look like for us?
Really, we already play those teams that we're going into. You're basically flipping a Sydney for a Browning for football, and you play them once a year. We would go there maybe, and then they would come here.
This is only for football.
Only for football.
And we still play Central. It just won't be a
Yep.
conference game.
Still play Lockwood.
So there's 24 teams in Class A, so it split up each of the divisions, 4 divisions of 6 teams. So we would have 5 conference games and you could have 4, but 3 mainly non-conference games. So you'd still get your 8 or 9 football games in the year. You would just be playing 3 non-conference, where right now, every single one of our football games is a conference game.
Who would our three non-conference would be? Lockwood, Central.
And then we would pick another team from the East.
So we already play Park. We already play Lewistown. We already play Havre. Those would be in our conference. Browning would replace Sydney.
So you could get a Miles City, Hardin, or Glendive. And the schedule hasn't been set yet, or the playoff bracket hasn't been set yet. I haven't heard of a date, but I would guess that we would be meeting, annual meeting, to at least start those conversations to look at those items.
I'll attend that with you so we can look at those. Now, how many playoff teams per
Take
conference?
3 playoff teams from each conference.
So out of every 6 teams, we're taking half to the playoffs.
The discussion in our conference, the central one that we will be going into, is what is the situation with Park Livingston? They've played JV football for the past 4 years. Doesn't look like they're going to field a varsity team. So what does that look like on all of our central games that we play. Lose a game, do we have to find somebody? Do we have a bye? We don't know that conversation.
How does that
yet.
work? If they have enough kids to play JV games in their Class A school, isn't that enough? The same kids play varsity games? They won't play a JV schedule, they would just play varsity, but to me, you have seniors, you have juniors on there. We have seniors and juniors. We started some sophomores. I mean,
There's been
everyone's,
big discussion in Class A, for example, Park not doing that, but also Hardin. They played 3 varsity games and then forfeited the rest of their season, played basically JV games the rest of the season. And with football, it gets into a lot of different factors. I know on Hardin's standpoint this year, they only had 4 seniors and 2 juniors, and the rest were starting freshmen and starting sophomores. So from a size standpoint and an experience standpoint, they're looking for the future where they're playing freshmen and sophomores mainly, going up against a lot of these schools that have seniors and juniors, and just take a beating. Those kids aren't going to come out anymore. So it's really different. Park this year fielded a JV squad of 25 kids. They've still played 11-man, where they should be playing 8-man. So right now, being a Class A school, you can't play 8-man football. So I think there's going to be a lot of those things coming down the line with football as a whole. But right now, that's where we're at. It'll be really interesting to hear the conversations because East Helena is the main one that proposed this. And you look at that Central Conference, East Helena wouldn't even make the playoffs. They're a pretty good football team. 3 of the semifinal teams of this year's ending playoff picture would be in that Central Conference. So it is a tough division. However, just 2 years ago, they were really, really bad. Lewistown's kind of up and down. They'll be pretty good. But each conference is a little different. But it'll be interesting to see now that the playoffs have shaped out what the conversation is going to be at the January meeting. We all get together.
Comments? Yes, sir. Come on, step on forward.
This is probably more for Andrew, but Browning, that's quite a distance away, probably twice as far as Sydney as far as drive time.
about 100 miles further to Browning than Sydney.
Yeah.
Much prettier too.
But it's much prettier, I get it. But are other districts asked to do something like this, or is it just Laurel? And if it's just Laurel, then what can Laurel do to, because it's a hardship on us, on budget-wise and everything like that. Are other districts asked to have one that's way out one direction, or is it just Laurel that's being asked to do that?
So that would be for our conference game. So we're kind of asked to do that, or in a way forced to do that. But from a scheduling standpoint, I think that's where the scheduling committee is going to really look at playing some of these non-conference. I mean, Sydney might want to play Dillon. Probably not, but they might, based on competition and stuff. So from a scheduling standpoint, I would suggest playing Browning like on 1 o'clock on a Saturday, just to help. I can help from the kids travel and a game standpoint, but I also got to think about the parents and families traveling as well. A lot of families might go up and come back in the same day.
I just hate to compare, but this is me just as a parent, somebody in Laurel, and I'm thinking, okay, what is Central being asked to do? Because they're just right next door. Are they going to be asked to play Kalispell?
Right.
And if not, then why is that okay for Laurel, for us to say, okay, we'll go to Browning, but Central doesn't have to do any change? And not saying anything with Central, not that there are rivals or anything like that, but how fair is that? And then is there anything the district can do to contest it? If we're like, okay, this doesn't seem fair, it seems like Laurel is kind of getting the short end of the stick, so to speak, what can the district?
Justin, unfortunately, I've been in a lot of these meetings, reconferencing, redistricting, and that's too, in the end, it's geographic. So we're further that direction than Lockwood is. So then they move the one that's furthest. Big Timber in Class Bs was right on the line of a couple, and sometimes they would come over here and have to Shepherd, Huntley, and Red Lodge, and other times they go the other direction with Manhattan and Boulder and Whitehall. They got jumped around a few years in a row, and that's what I kind of feel like here is we're just, okay, we got to make the line somewhere because we got to have 6, 6, 6, and 6 teams, and the next one over was Laurel. So luckily, again, our schedule doesn't change a lot. It changes our conference.
Right.
And it trades a 275-mile trip for a 375-mile trip, which isn't the end of the world, but it is frustrating because his question really was, Andrew, is there other schools that are kind of on that border that may have to give up traditional conference rivalries?
Fortunately, you're probably, unless they choose and the scheduling committee puts them there, which I'm going to be a part of that, so I can bring that point up, like you need to have these type of road trips for your conference. I mean, it's in our conference now. Well, what are these non-conference teams? You need to have similar travel. Fortunately, probably your Centrals and your Lockwoods, they're going to have the capability of playing maybe your East Helenas and your Havers and your Lewistown for their non-conference. But from a scheduling committee standpoint, we could say, maybe you're not going to have Haver and you're going to go to, I don't want to say Whitefish, but maybe you go to Whitefish or something like that, Big Fork. Unfortunately, your Sydneys and your Libbies, they're non-conference, either North Dakota or Idaho, or they're going to come to Laurel. But then that's next year you go.
But I would tell you, Justin, I highly, highly doubt that they're going to look at mileage, and that will not be a factor in there. Well, we have to go this far, you should have to go 375 miles. They're not going to take.
And in some ways, I'm thinking of the community, because the community could get really upset. And so I'm always big on only get upset with what you have control over. So if we really have no control over it, that's why I was like, what can we do if we don't like it? We really don't have, if we can't do anything about it, it's just, it is what it is. And that's important also for the community to understand is, yeah, you may not like having to go to Browning or Browning coming here, whatever it is, but we really, as a district, we really have no say other than the one AD that is surrounded by whatever, how many, 24 other ADs.
15-3 vote.
Yeah.
And Andrew, what did you vote? And how long are we stuck in this?
2 years. It'll be a 2-year rotation.
Reevaluate.
2-year rotation, then. Absolutely, very good point.
Thank you, Justin.
2-year rotation.
Other comments, questions?
Doesn't mean they'll change it in 2 years. It just means that.
Means that we can attempt to.
And like I brought up the fact in our meetings, they used to be like north, central, and east about 10, 15 years ago. Well, now they're talking about going to these 4 divisions. And maybe 5 years, 10 years, we'll probably go back to totally east and west. So it's just a matter of a lot of the older ADs said, we fought to get to 2 divisions. Now we're fighting to go back to 4 divisions. Like, what was our purpose that time ago? And that's how all these classification meetings go.
Random thoughts usually.
Renee?
Are there any other sports that we're looking at?
There's been very, very small talk about volleyball and basketball. I'm very,
Doing the same.
doing the same divisions for those sports. But very, very small. I fight that really hard because you will play your conference teams twice. So it's a go there and they come here type of deal. So that travel to Browning then exemplifies, especially in the winter. You're going to Havre, where from a scheduling purpose in football, I can go, we're going to Browning, Havre's coming to here. Same year, we're not both going there, both coming here. For basketball, you don't have that.
And then the alternative year would be like, if we went to Browning this year, next year they would come to us, vice versa. So it's always, yeah.
Very, very small discussion on volleyball and basketball, but it is out.
So the expectation is we make the playoffs every year now, right?
And so will Central, because theirs, I think, is the easiest division, my personal opinion.
When will we know about,
They say they're going to try to field a varsity team, but very, very small chance. So that's the big question.
That's what happened.
if
In the Central Conference, they would
Pardon?
we have to
basically
pick
would
up
go
another
into
game somewhere, is what it means, that we have to pick up another game and everyone's schedules sometimes can be full or. I get irritated with that. Because
Central's in
AD in Plentywood, I sent 13 boys to the state champion Huntley Project team to play 11-man football, and we sent 13 kids. And the Class A school can't field a football team. I don't understand that.
In general, probably football numbers are down. Is that true? I mean, in number of kids overall statewide.
probably overall statewide.
And I think there's programs that are, but in general, I think there's less and less people
That's going to.
allowing their kids to play football.
Well, just don't be jealous. I could be going to Browning next year. So, I mean, just letting you know, I'll report back.
It's not windy.
Please make it earlier in the year on a Saturday. Wonderful. If anything else for Andrew?
We did talk about Saturday games with those long ones, and we would oblige them the same way here too. So.
We even brought up the thought of meeting halfway, there's been even, sometimes schools meet in, Butte, if there's a long distance, and meet at a Montana Tech and have that college atmosphere. There's been schools play in Bozeman or Grizz Stadium as well, so there's definitely that option. Granted, then you are renting a facility and giving up your home, but kind of cool for the kids sometimes.
Thank you very much. Okay, if nothing else on that, discussion for negotiation training from MTSBA December 17th, 1 through 5. Everybody has been registered. That login information will be sent out once received.
Julie should be getting it, or me. I think it's Julie though. I registered as a group because it was the same cost, $0, as it was to register everyone individually or one person. It's part of our school board association dues, so just went ahead and registered everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
So we do it from our computers wherever we're at. We're not all meeting here.
Correct.
Nope, it would just be as wherever you're at.
And then for negotiations for next year, the union has already made their official request for next year's negotiations for their CBA. Typically, we have 3 trustees either sitting on the certified and then 3 sitting on the classified. The chair and the co-chair kind of join both of those and then put one member of another trustee on each one of those. So I've had a couple of requests. I'll be sending those out in January, just so we can be aware of who's going to be sitting on those.
But this is neat for everybody.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm just letting you know, just so people know.
Part of it, it's still good to,
Yeah.
it's still kind of a neat opportunity to.
I don't remember them doing that
Not-
last year or 2 years ago, so it is nice. So I'm not saying just because attend.
Is it pre-recorded or do you have to, like if I work from that day?
Should be live, but I think they're recording it, then they usually send it out as a, so you can watch it at a later time. At least that's what they traditionally do.
If you're registered, then they send it back out to you, right?
I think that's what Donnie thinks. I trust Donnie's judgment.
Okay, if nothing else, then we'll move through discussion, charter school application hearing with the Board of Public Education. That has been set up for December 11th at 10 a.m. We are scheduled to actually present at 10. Okay,
It actually will start at 8:15. If you would like to request a Zoom link, I technically sent you all a Zoom link, and I wasn't supposed to. I was only supposed to send the Zoom link to the individuals that could speak. So that would be Dr. Byington, that'll be Mr. Stilson, that would be Brittany, myself,
Charla.
and Charlotte, Ms. Wedge. So those are the people that have it. So if you would like to request a Zoom link, just email them at that link and you can get on anytime during the day. You can look at other people's. They're going to be doing them all day. I think we're the third one. So you can get on and listen to anybody's, including ours. And ours is scheduled to start at 10.
an email did go out to the public, so if you heard that in the paper, some discussion through some social media channels have happened, so.
We'll present our need for about 10 minutes. We'll answer questions for the Board of Public Ed for 15, and then they leave 5 minutes for public comment. I don't know how that works, but so they give you about 30 minutes per group to do that.
Comments or questions? So if anybody in the public wants to do that, they have to register. They have to go through all that, just like we do, so.
Email them and they'll send you the link.
Have they ever denied an application yet?
Yep. Last year, out of 25 applications, 19 passed, 2 or 3 were denied, and a couple were withdrawn.
On that? Comments, questions from public audience? Future discussion items? Anybody? Julie?
I'd like to add elections for,
Elections for January, okay.
we will be, yeah, because we need to pass a resolution by February 1st. And then also the trustees thing is open. They can file for election starting December 12th through March 27th. So we got 3 trustees, Kayla, Chris, and Chris Larash and Jennifer this year.
Say that one more time.
We have 3 trustees,
Okay.
Kayla, Chris Larash, and Jennifer.
Do we have career vocational on?
I think we already have that on there, but I'll put it on there just to make sure.
We throw them out, trying to remind ourselves and highlight and everything, so. Anything else?
Chris, what was that again?
ACT is, I think it is, if I remember correctly.
I told Wendy at some point, put it on the list.
In our first presentation, the timeline, we were going to present like after the end of first semester. So that would be either, well, we would prefer like the first one in February or the last one in January.
We have it on the last one in January. I think now that we're talking, we'll double check on that. I will notice you. Anything else? Okay. All right. Are you two ready? Okay, so before I put us into closed session for the next item on the agenda, let me get through my statement and then I will release you. Under the Montana Code of Antiquated, under 2-3-203, I, the presiding officer of this meeting, may close the meeting during the time of the discussion relates to a matter of individual privacy, and if and only if the presiding officer, I myself, determines that this demands of individual privacy clearly exceeds the merits of public disclosure. So I will be closing this next this next session of our agenda. Trustees, let's take a quick 5 minutes. We will ask everybody else to please leave. You're more than welcome to stick around when we reopen the meeting if you would like to. If not, have a great evening.